All right, welcome back, Florida Football Insiders. I'm your host, Jason. We are going to talk feel-good story in the state of Florida now with Eric Henry. Eric Henry covers FIU, the Panthers. They have been to me, they've been the surprise in the state of Florida and one of the surprises around all over the country this year with how they played 4-4. And you think 4-4. Well, this team going into this year, this team was the expectation. This team would be lucky to win 2 games. And they've done a tremendous job. New coach, Mike MacIntyre. Eric Henry covers FIU. He's also a podcast host that does a podcast on Conference USA. He's also the co-managing editor of Underdog Dynasty. So welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Henry.
Man, Jason, I don't know if I'm worthy of that illustrious introduction, but I know the Panthers certainly are, as you mentioned, the team that not much was expected out of this year. Always a pleasure to hop on with you and talk a little football.
Yeah, let's before we get to FIU, you're also a Biletnikoff Award voter, which goes to the best college wide receiver in the country we're in week 10 now, the college football season. For what you've been watching, I know you cover a lot of college football over the country. Give me a few names of some names that have impressed you at the wide receiver position around the country.
Can I give you a couple group of 5 names? Because in my mind, those are the guys who don't get enough love. Going to start with Rashee Rice out of SMU. If you know anything about the Mustangs offense, they're going to throw the football around. He's a kid who's, I believe, right at the 1,000-yard mark as far as receptions here as we're going into week 9, week 10 of the year. Again, in my mind, and this is my second year voting, so kind of the way I look at it, I like to judge the receiver in relation to the competition they play, because here's the fact of the matter. You can only play who you're scheduled. I can't judge a group of 5 receiver and say, hey, he's not doing it against Alabama or Tennessee or whoever. It's who's on their schedule. Right. So give you a guy like Rashee Rice, a guy like Ali Jennings as well from Old Dominion, who's almost at 1,000 yards as well. So those are 2 guys I'm kind of keeping my eye on. Again, this is kind of my philosophy as someone who covers the group of 5s exclusively, but now has the Biletnikoff Award vote is the Power 5 guys. They're going to be there at the end of the year. I try to, if I was to put it down a ratio like 80-20, exclusively focus on those group of 5 guys and then see how they measure up. Again, how they fared in relation to their competition against those P5 guys and make a choice from there. So just a couple of, smaller names that your audience may not be familiar with, 2 guys I'm keeping my eye on.
I know a couple guys nationally that we've kind of probably heard about. The guy from out at Jordan Addison at USC.
Yep.
You got the kid at TCU who's had a really good year with Max Duggan. So again, as we the kid from Tennessee, Hyatt. Yeah, Jalen Hyatt's had a couple huge matchups, and he's got another huge one this week against Georgia. So this whole process will develop here this next 3 or 4 weeks as we wrap up the regular season.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to your team you cover every week. The FIU Panthers, 4-4. And another overtime win over La Tech last Friday night, I believe, was when they played.
Yep.
Just give me a little overview of FIU through 8 weeks. And again, what Coach MacIntyre is doing down there is pretty remarkable. And again, no expectations going into the year.
Yeah, well, listen, Jason, I will try to give you the Cliff Notes version, because if I were to take you through the entire 8-9 weeks of the year, we might be here for more than 20 minutes. But the way this season started for FIU, you talk about a close, a 1-point win over an FCS team to open the year in Bryant. I think that was kind of a bit of level setting for the team. Not necessarily what their expectations were inside the program, but just where they were, right? And in talking with Coach MacIntyre throughout the season, especially in the early part of the year, I think those first 3 or 4 games really were an evaluation process of the guys who were returning, which quite frankly, there weren't that many from last year's roster, only 40-something players who were returning, and then B, the 49 players that he brought in to see how would that mix kind of come together and how would they fare on the field. So they start 1-2, excuse me, with the losses to Texas State and Western Kentucky. We saw what happened there, but really from there on, Jason, they've played solid football. And again, for a team that is made up of primarily underclassmen and first-time starters, you can't be mad that, okay, you take the loss at UConn, but I think we've seen with Jim Mora what he's doing this year. He's got them trending in the right direction. So not exactly UConn of the past few years. UTSA is supposed to be the cream of the crop in Conference USA. And for all intents and purposes, they are in first place. But Jason, the line going into that game was, I want to say UTSA -38.
Yeah, it was
to kind of to kind of give you an idea of where they were supposed to be, FIU loses that game 30-10, and quite frankly had their opportunities to make that thing closer. And then they rebound 2 straight wins. The Charlotte, which ends up being the last game for Will Healy with that program. He ends up getting dismissed after that, but they get a road win at Charlotte and follow that up with their first home FBS victory, emphasis on home being FIU, because they did have the quote unquote home win against Miami at Marlins Park, which was considered a home game in 2019. But the first home win, FBS win for the team since 2 weeks. The week before the Miami game, 2019, against Old Dominion. So really, you see this team, Jason, the guys are getting just more confidence. And I kind of said this at the beginning of the year. All of the question marks you had about this team, they were only going to be solved with playing time. With such a young group, the only way they were going to solve those questions is getting them out there in the field and getting reps. And we've seen that the trajectory heading in the right direction so far this year.
Give me a couple names on offense and defense, just guys that have played either above what expectation level or just guys we don't know about because we don't, you don't get all the attention that some of the other Florida schools get. Give me a couple guys on both sides of the ball that are really playing well and lead to this success.
Here's one, quarterback Grayson James. There's not many times you're going to get a 3-star Texas quarterback recruit to come to Florida. And he's a kid who, quite frankly, if his trajectory keeps going in this direction, A, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the state of Florida. B, they're going to have a challenge to hang on to him because, quarterback play is a premium across college football. But no, as I mentioned, Jason, a 3-star recruit, someone whose recruitment was primarily affected by the transfer portal. If teams weren't taking quarterbacks out of the transfer portal left and right, he'd be, at a TCU or one of those Power 5 schools. FIU gets him. His play is heading in the right direction. Big kid, 6'3", 235, can move.
He's a true freshman.
Sophomore. Last year was his true freshman year. Was the back quarterback last year.
Okay.
At running back, keep an eye on Lexington Flex Joseph out of Miami Central, one of the top players in the nation in all-purpose yardage, receiving, rushing, and returning. And then, of course, as I mentioned, speaking of the Biletnikoff Award, Tyrese Chambers, the player who broke T.Y. Hilton's records for receiving yards, receiving touchdowns in a year. He's been banged up a little bit, but still looks like a man amongst boys. When he is on the field, looks like a pro. That's offensively. Defensively, I'll give you a couple names really quick. Donovan Manuel is a kid who came from East Tennessee State last year as a 3-4 linebacker. He's got over 70 tackles on the year. And then as a safety, a former 3-star recruit in Demetrius Hill, the last FIU defensive back to lead the team in tackles. And I know you're thinking, all right, DB leading the team in tackles, not always the best thing, but Demetrius is making some plays at the line of scrimmage and, stopping guys at the point of attack once they make catches. But the last player to do that for FIU was safety Jonathan Cyprian, who, of course, spent, a decade in the NFL. So definitely a rising player to keep an eye on.
Talk about the family atmosphere that he's kind of building, the spirit of the team. And you watch some social media stuff, a lot of stuff in the locker room post game, a lot of excitement. Just seems like he's got that bunch collectively all playing for each other.
Jason, I'll give you a quick anecdote about Mike MacIntyre. So after the 73-0 loss of Western Kentucky, maybe I've just become so accustomed to, and this is not a slight on Butch Davis. I think it's just his style. When you lose like that, it shows on Butch Davis. And Mike MacIntyre, I'm expecting him to kind of be similar. He came out, kind of gave me a wink and was like, hey, I'll be there in a second, ready to do presser. And that really stuck with me because I think if that's the front, and I don't mean front in a negative way, but if that's the front he's showing to us, he is keeping in with that positive tone, positive energy with these guys. And I think that's the right approach, considering, as we talked about last time I was on your show, they hadn't won an FBS game in how many years? You can only beat them down so much. So that truly is Mike MacIntyre's energy. He, for better or worse, there have been some former FIU Panthers who haven't liked the positive approach. And he said, look, I can be a fiery, feisty guy behind closed doors and when it's time to, do that, but I'm going to keep loving these guys because they need to buy into what we're trying to do here as a program. And that's just his approach. And I think it is starting to show, kind of fruits of their labor here at 4-4.
Yeah, like I said, if they somehow can win 2 more games, you get bowl eligible. I would say it's not a miracle, but it's a dramatic improvement from where they were what expectations were. They played in a couple overtime games, have won them both. Again, that shows some stick-to-itiveness, the ability to persevere. And like I said, when you get beat 73-0, it's easy to, okay, this is the end of the road. I'm going to transfer. I'm out of here. They haven't done that. You see a lot of these guys that are getting an opportunity to play, a lot of the younger players getting a chance to play, and it would only do nothing but help them as they move forward into their careers at FIU.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned as far as the young guys getting an opportunity to play, because I think it's kind of like the benefit of ignorance, and that you don't know what you don't know, whether it's the 40-something guys who come into the program who weren't a part of the losing, or the guys who have said, hey, yeah, we may have been here a year or two or three, but we haven't played. So, I mean, yes, we may have been a part of, the losing in the past, but we're just happy to see the field and finally get a chance to make our name and make our stamp. So that truly is something that I think is carrying over. And again, they don't know what they don't know. They've been underdogs in I believe in every game except for the Bryant game that they won. And they're like, hey, we don't care if Vegas says we're underdogs. We're just trying to get out there and play.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think this will help recruiting too. I think you get younger guys out there to say, hey, there's opportunity to play. You don't have to go sit, whether it's at a bigger school, whether it's a Power 5 school or another, whatever. There'll be plenty of opportunity. Even next year, there'll be plenty of opportunity for new guys to come in, the transfer portal. He's a known coach. He's got a good resume. He's won at other places. So I think you're definitely seeing the fruits of coach's labor. What has been the atmosphere in the home game, stadium wise? Is the student body, is the university kind of realizing, hey, we're making some improvements here?
Listen, the fact of the matter is Miami is a unique place to play college football. You can go ask the Hurricanes that. They'll tell you the same thing. It's been better amongst the student body. I mean, the first three games, Bryant, UConn, UTSA, those should be the home games, if my memory serves me correct. It's been, student body was amazing. I mean, they actually in the last two games had more students than they had all of last year. Now, I say all that to say that last week or last Friday against Louisiana Tech, Halloween weekend in South Florida, the students are looking to go out there to enjoy the fun that's out there with Halloween weekend, right? So it was a bit light last Friday. But with that being said, I do think, especially coming off of the win against Louisiana Tech, it'll be interesting to see what happens this week with North Texas, because that's a game that, again, you're probably projected to lose. But still, I think now with there being 4-4, and even if they come back 4-5, you have two of the last three at home. You have the rivalry game with the Shula Bowl against FAU, and opportunities to qualify for a bowl. I think the attendance will be up those last two games.
Just talking to Coach MacIntyre, obviously they had it also early in the year. If you don't remember, fans, they had a tragedy. One of their players passed away. Former brother of Buffalo Bills tight end Dawson Knox, his brother passed away. How they handled that whole situation throughout the year. They dedicating. They probably have a dedication, a helmet sticker type deal, and a dedication that they're obviously it's a teammate. It's a guy. I know he wasn't there he wasn't in the program a long time, but he was a guy that was well respected and well liked.
Yeah, Jason, I think when you get older like us and you experience life a little bit, I don't want to say you become jaded, but you have more life experience to lean on. You understand those things happen. The only reason I lead with that is because you talk about the fact that he wasn't there a long time, but these are still 18 to 22-year-old kids. Your mortality hasn't set in yet. So it really affected them to see a guy who they were there. And at that age, you're like, man, this could be any one of us. As far as honoring him, helmet decal, of course, his jersey has come on the road. It's been whether at home or on the road, his jersey's been there. So definitely a huge part. I mean, Mike MacIntyre has known the Knox family. I think he said going back till he was a teenager.
Right.
So definitely, it's something that affected them. But yeah, I mean, I think they're handling it as best they can at that age.
Talk about the last four games, and I'll get you out of here. Give us a little preview of the last four games of the year. Do they have a chance to win a couple of them to get bowl eligible? What is give us a quick synopsis of the last four games.
Yeah, so North Texas, I do believe, will be a loss. North Texas is a team that A, is heading to the American, B, coming off a really big win against Western Kentucky. They have conference title hopes. And so quite frankly, especially on the road, may be too tough. The final three, completely indicative of Conference USA. Any game outside of those top two teams in UTSA and North Texas could be a toss-up, right? So FAU, we know that Willie Taggart is struggling. They did get a huge win, a much-needed win against UAB to keep any hopes of a bowl season for them alive. Their next game will be the Shula Bowl. FAU has not lost a Shula Bowl in 5 seasons. So that's one that, again, very much a 50-50 game. It depends on which FAU team you get.
Sure.
Then you go to UTEP. As someone who made that trip to go to New Mexico State, let me tell you right now, Jason, that is a long ride to get out to El Paso. And we'll see how that plays a factor. I think the benefit for the Panthers is they've already done it. Again, to New Mexico State, they've made that flight. So at least their body will be adjusted to that. And UTEP is a team that, again, depends on which team you get, very much up and down. And the same can be said for Middle Tennessee. I'm sure fans of your show know that Middle Tennessee came into Miami, beat the Hurricanes. It's a matter of which Blue Raider team are you going to get? Rick Stockstill, former Florida State Seminole, of course, Coach Stock. I laugh because Coach Stock made sure to let the Hurricane fans know post game that hey, this one is for Coach Bowden. I'm a Seminole. It's nice to beat the Hurricanes there, but they've been very much up and down as well, Jason. So North Texas, I do believe will be a loss, but those final three very much toss-up games, and I think there's a fair chance they could get. If not all three of those, definitely 2 out of 3, and somehow qualify for a bowl game at 6-6, which again, considering the expectations coming into the year, would be, just an incredible feat by Mike MacIntyre and his staff.
Give me a quick thought on the Hurricanes. I know you're down there and you obviously you're around that fan base and all that. I mean, from 3-0 to where they are now is, it's just gone downhill in a hurry. And I know Mario's known for his recruiting and he'll get that going, but man, just the on the field play the last 5 weeks has just been really, really poor.
Jason, the feeling that I've gotten being in South Florida is it puts you this way. If Mario Cristobal were not a Miami guy, and specifically a Miami guy from the heyday,
right,
they would be upset through the roof. Right now, I do think there's a little bit more patience given to him. It doesn't hurt that he just signed, I believe, the number 2 or number 3 rated player coming out of this class. At least his recruiting is helping. And now I don't necessarily subscribe to this theory, but I do think there's a measure of the Hurricane fan base that says we need to get Cristobal's guys in, and that older, group. Once we shift those guys out, I'm kind of a believer, Jason, of hey, at the Power 5, especially at this level of Miami, you're not recruiting just, little sisters of the poor. Those guys should be talented enough to come in and make play and make an impact immediately. But
you got to coach them up. You got to coach them up.
You nailed it. But with that being said, I do think the level of patience given from Mario Cristobal is one that is it's a benefit that he is a Hurricane and from that heyday. Otherwise, it'd be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to get fired, but
sure.
But the decline in the play. A lot of people thought Tyler Van Dyke was going to take a big jump forward this year, and he hasn't done that. Whether it's an offensive scheme, whether it's him, we don't know. But that's been the biggest disappointment. Is you've not seen the ascension of Tyler Van Dyke and the physicality that Mario Cristobal implements that he's known for. You've not seen a whole lot of that with the offensive and defensive lines.
Undoubtedly. And again, we'll see, it's year one, but listen, you can point to FIU, and I'm not comparing the ACC to Conference USA.
Yep.
I'm a firm believer that look at Jim Mora. I mean, UConn has struggled forever.
Yep.
And you're able to get some results. So we'll see what happens, but that's just my 2 cents.
And you got the rivalry down there this week. Got Florida State coming to town down to Miami with the the huge rivalry game. We'll both Florida State's better than Miami is this year. Not much, but that's a toss-up game. Either team, Florida State should win, but it's definitely a game for Miami could win. It would be interesting what the crowd is like. Again, normally that's a sold-out building. That probably won't be sold out in Miami this weekend, I would anticipate.
I'd anticipate the same thing, undoubtedly.
Well, Eric, keep up the great work, man. Tell everybody where they can find your work online with your Conference USA podcast, as well as the Underdog Dynasty.
Absolutely. So you can find my FIU and Conference USA coverage at underdogdynasty.com. That is SB Nation's home for a Group of 5 and FCS football coverage. And last but not least, you can find me on Twitter at Eric C. Henry _.
Does a great job. He's a Tampa guy too. He lives in Tampa, commutes back and forth to South Florida every week. And get ready for the. Tell the audience what kind of trip was that from to Las Cruces, New Mexico? How many stopovers? How long was that trip? Because Coach Levitt and I were talking about that, about what a rough trip that is to Las Cruces and UTEP from Tampa and from the Florida area.
Jason, I decided to make that trip day of game. And I don't think I realized that if you had a 7:00 start Las Cruces time. So of course you're flying out of Tampa, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you fly to DFW, then you go DFW to El Paso. Then you got to drive the hour over to Las Cruces. Man, I talk about a world when I flew back home the next day, of course. Jason, I've done this for 6 years now. It took me, no joke, probably up until Tuesday to finally feel like I was not on a plane, So it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, that's like I said, it's a long commute for those guys. And I mean, I don't. Does FIU, do they charter or are they flying commercial?
They charter.
Okay, so at least they're going direct, so that at least they're not having to deal with some of that stuff. But yeah, that's a long trek from here to New Mexico and El Paso, Texas. Keep up the great work, Eric. We'll definitely check in later in the year. If we get bowl eligible, the Panthers will definitely be one of the big stories in the country because, again, everybody was thinking 1 or 2 wins at most for FIU. So great job, Coach MacIntyre, and great job, Eric Henry. Keep up the great work, buddy.
Appreciate it, my man.
All right, we'll be right back on the Florida Football Insiders.